Hey guys, Justin Rivas here. Congratulations, you bought a digital SLR. Maybe you've had it for years, but you're still stuck on the auto setting, or maybe no flash, or maybe one of the little ones with the pictures on it. That is not going to help you get the best photos out of a powerful camera like this. Now I know it can be overwhelming. There's so many buttons on the cameras, there's a lot of dials, there's so many things you can do with it. But if you're like me, you were overwhelmed by this and you didn't end up taking a lot of great photos. I look back at the photos I took. I was in auto no flash for so long. And yeah, there's the odd photo that's good, but there's a lot of them that are just bad. And I just didn't know what I was doing and I didn't know where to start. So I'm going to give you the first place you should start when you buy your new digital SLR or with the current one that you have, that's going to help you start to take some really good photos and take control over this camera and use it to your advantage. And so what I'm talking about is a special mode on your camera. It's called aperture priority. And on a Nikon like this, it's a little A on the top of your dial. If you have a Canon, that's an AV. Sony or Olympus, something else with an A on it. Now, aperture priority. Aperture is the technical term for how big the opening in your lens is and how much light it's letting into the camera. And so the bigger the opening, the more light that gets into your camera. The smaller the opening, the less light that gets into your camera. It's just like your eye. When you walk out into bright sunlight, your pupil is going whoop to restrict the amount of light that's going in there. When you go into a really dark room, it's opening up bigger. And so the bigger that we set the aperture, the more light that we're going to let in. This is really important because lots of times we're taking photos indoors and we want to let as much light in as possible because otherwise we're going to end up with blurry photos or really grainy photos as the camera tries to compensate for that. But we know that we're indoors, we know the lighting situation, and we know what we're trying to do, so we want to take control over that. So that's the first thing that aperture does, is control the amount of light. But the other thing, which I would say is even more important, is your aperture controls how much the background is blurred out in an image. Background and even foreground as well. It really controls how much you want the subject of what you're taking a picture of to pop out of that image. When you see images where a person is there and they're in focus and they're really sharp and everything else is blurry, you're just naturally drawn to the person. It's going to make a much better portrait. On the other side of that is, if you're taking a picture of a big mountain landscape with rivers and trees, you want the whole thing to be in focus, not just the tree that you happen to be pointed the middle of your camera on where it's in focus and suddenly the mountains are out of focus and the river's out of focus. No, with a landscape, you want everything to be in focus. Maybe in the middle of that is if you're taking a picture of a whole bunch of people. Maybe it's a family shot at the family reunion. You got 60 people in there. You want all the people to be in focus, but you still want maybe the background, maybe you're camping somewhere, you still want the background to be blurred out so that the focus is on the people. But if you had your aperture set the wrong way, you would have the people in the front row in focus, people in the back row out of focus. We don't want to do that. But we do want to take control over our camera and start taking better pictures. So you're going to turn that dial to A, and here's what you're going to do. You're going to use this little wheel here that's right at your thumb. And this wheel lets you adjust the aperture. Your camera is going to take care of all the other settings so that you can set the aperture to what you want. And provided you have enough light, it's going to help you take a decent photo. But it's going to give you control over how much you want to blur out that background or keep it in focus. Chances are, if you have a digital SLR, you're taking pictures of people. That's typically where we start, is pictures of family, pictures of kids, pictures of friends, pictures of brothers and sisters, maybe pictures of people on the street. It's generally important that when we're taking pictures of people that we try and blur or blow out that background as much as possible so that we help them really jump out of the photo and we're focused on them. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn that to A. We're going to take this dial and we're going to dial it down as low as possible. Now this is going to sound completely backwards, and it is backwards, but the lower that number is, the bigger your aperture is and the more it's going to blow out or blur that background. So we want to get that number as low as possible so that everything is blurry except for the thing that we're focused on. On the other end of the spectrum is, the higher that number is, the more things are in focus and the smaller that hole gets. So with aperture, this is backwards in that a lower number is bigger and a bigger number is smaller. So that's backwards. Get over it. We're going to work with it. So what I want you to do is I want you to think about the next time that you're going to take a picture of somebody, turn that thing to A or AV on a camera, or look in your manual, find out what your aperture priority mode is, put it there, take this dial and dial it down as low as you can possibly go. In the case of your standard kit lens that comes with your camera, you're not going to get those super, super, super blurry background images because the lenses frankly just aren't quite at the level to be able to do that, but it's going to help you a little bit and you're going to see a difference in the photo. Here's a great test that you can do is go find a little superhero character or a mug or anything that you have, put it in a well-lit area like a living room with some windows and put it on the coffee table. Put that into the A mode, that aperture priority, dial that down as low as you can go, take a picture. Now, dial it up a few clicks, take a picture. Dial it up a few more clicks and take a picture. You're gonna, when you look at that on the computer, you're gonna notice that, hey, wow, in the first one, the background was a little bit blurry and then a little bit less blurry and a little bit less blurry. And you're gonna see the difference it makes on that thing kind of popping out in the picture. Now, let's just talk generally about some numbers. Yeah, you may have to come back and watch this again, but with your standard kit lens that comes with your camera, you're gonna see on the very front of it, if you look at it, there's gonna be some numbers there. Chances are it's gonna say something like 18 to 55 millimeters or 18 to 105 millimeters mm. And that's gonna say how wide of a shot can it get to how close can it zoom in on a subject. So that's the first set of numbers. But then the second set of numbers is gonna say 3.5 to 5.6, or maybe something similar to that if you bought a different lens. But those numbers right there, 3.5 to 5.6, that is the lowest aperture, meaning the biggest opening that it can possibly get as it zooms throughout its range. And again, we want the lowest number possible to be able to blur out that background as much. And so those are kind of reference numbers for kind of the lowest number you should see on your camera. And so if you're zoomed all the way out, you should be able to see a 3.5 on your screen as you dial this down. And then as you begin to zoom into your subject, that number is going to go up a little bit as your camera can't quite keep that opening as big as possible because of the cheaper kit lens that's on there. But again, those are kind of the numbers that you should see as you begin to test out those photos on the lowest end. You can crank that up to, let's say, 11 or even probably all the way up to 22. 22 is going to keep a lot of stuff in focus, but that hole is going to be really small and it's going to be really dark. You probably can only use that during the day. But something like maybe f6.3, you probably can still take a photo indoors if you're really steady with your hands. And you'll see that that'll keep more things in focus. That might be good if you're trying to take a picture of, 3 or 4 people, or maybe you're having somebody stand and somebody's head is kind of here and another person is back a little ways. That'll kind of help them both stay in focus. But if you're taking a picture of one person, get the lowest number you possibly can, crank that thing down, and you're going to see that subject pop out of the background. On the other side, if you're on vacation, you're trying to take that stellar shot of the mountains in the background with the river and the trees, crank that up to try around f11, see what happens, take the picture, and you're going to have to experiment in there. But that is the first step. You don't have to touch any other settings on here. You're only going to worry about 2 things. One is put that to the aperture priority mode on your dial here, and then you're going to use this little slider right here to control how big that opening is. Start there, experiment with it. You have to get out and shoot. That's the only way that you're going to get better, is by experimenting, trying things out. Try that. It'll help you take control of your camera. You'll start to take better pictures because you can decide if you want your subject popping out of the background or kind of blending in. But start there. Next video I'm going to talk about is the first thing that you should buy after you buy your camera that's going to help you take way better photos. That's going to be in the next video, but stay tuned. Thanks for listening. I'm Justin, justinrivas.com. Thanks for watching. Terrible ending. Terrible ending. You should subscribe though. Thanks.